whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them. I'm gonna die out here.
The eater of worlds and of children. Have you checked the children?
Like, oh my god, it's the 1980s. With the Literary License Podcast retrospective of 80s horror films, with your co-hosts Joe Radazzo, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shago, keeping everything tubular and rad.
I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see, and they'll know, and they'll say, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
I'm your number one fan.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast, and this is our 2-for-1, the 80s, and we're covering The Changeling from 1980 and John Carpenter's The Fog from 1980s. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us. We got John Wilson with us. Hello, John.
Hello, folks.
Joe Randazzo. Hello, Joe.
Hello, everyone.
Matthew Brockmeyer. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
I'm going to massacre Jim's last name. Jim, hello.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
And Craig Johnson. Hello, Craig.
Hello, everybody.
And David Grant. Hello, David.
Hello there.
And Vicky will be with us later. She's having internet connections because she's been bootlegging off her neighbors. Let's find out what we've been up to. Starting with you, Jim. What have you been up to since last time we spoke to you?
I've been pretty busy getting ready for the Shock Fest out in LA with my book short, and then for Appalachian. I'm currently writing Finding Angel at this time. On Exhumed has been released last month and doing very well with reviews on Amazon Books. I got a request to enter the book short in the British Independent Film Festival and also in the Boulder, Colorado Film Festival, but coming up in March and April, both of those. So it's been pretty busy.
Oh, excellent news. Mm-hmm. And what about yourself, Craig? What have you been up to?
Just been sorting out the merchandise website at craigsworld.org. There's a couple of galleries on there. If you want to check it out, you can see me and David's work and our artwork. And we've still got a show on in the Cup of Joy restaurant in East Finchley in North London. If anyone's local and wants to pop in and see the work, it's on display for this season.
Hi there. What about yourself, David? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've sort of just been sort of working on some new songs, rehashing some old ideas. And there's a song called, I've decided to call it Paradox now, which is about, the human condition, I guess, But yeah, and actually starting to learn to play the piano, which is quite interesting. And because I just play the bass, but I thought it'd be nice to try a different instrument, So that's what I've been doing at the moment.
And yourself, Matthew, what have you been up to?
I've been getting some short stories published here and there. Got one recently in Year's Best Hardcore Horror. Got a Christmas one that's coming out right now. Hard at work on a new novel about Grateful Dead tour and, the pot growing scene. Pretty scary, fun, good.
That's really cool. Did you see somebody's making, I don't know who it was, I just saw it this morning. They're making a movie about Jerry Garcia. I can't remember
Martin Scorsese's making it.
Huh?
Martin Scorsese's making
Yes,
it.
that's
It
who it
stars
was.
Jonah
I was
Hill.
reading that this morning. That would be really cool. I don't know how many of you been to a Dead show, but they were a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I did Dead tour from '89 to '95.
Oh
Pretty
God,
wild
those are the
stuff.
days, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know how he did it without phones. It's. I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that's so the shit we did, man. It was wild.
Yeah, but it was fun. Social media was a thing. Social media is evil in a lot of capacities right now. So, but I have noticed you're doing a lot of stories. I watch you. Well, I always make comments when stuff comes out. So,
thank you.
And what about yourself, Joe? What have you been up to?
Since the last time I was here, I was in discussions for a project that Joe Estevez sent my way. I signed the NDA to that, and I started helping kind of formulate the story. I don't know how involved I'm going to be in it, but at the very least, it's begun. I did sign an NDA, so I can't say too much about it. It's going to be a historical drama. I don't know if they're going to have me write the screenplay or not. I know I'm assisting at least with the story. Also, I'll be ghostwriting, so it'll be uncredited. But yeah, the NDA is signed, and I started work on it on a couple days a week.
Excellent. And yourself, John?
I am officially moved. I'm now, out of Manhattan, and I'm now in Jersey. So my accent will change. My accent will change from here to there.
You're across
a little
the
bit
river.
Of California, a little bit of Missouri.
You'll sound really confused.
All over the place.
You'll be a confused New Yorker like I am. I'm down here in Texas. When I go back home, everybody's going, "What'd you say? What'd you say?"
Other than that, I've just been, trying to settle in, and I watched Halloween, which I forgot to ask you guys earlier about that, what you thought about that.
Halloween Kills.
Yeah,
I wasn't nearly upset as much as social media was.
Oh my God, I had friends so we watched it in the basement of my friend's house in Copiague in the dark. It was on Halloween weekend, and they were so pissed, and I was like, "You guys, it's a freaking movie, and you didn't see this coming? Like, come on!"
That's like everybody flipping out and tripping balls over Rob Zombie making the monsters. It's just like, just don't watch it.
Just a movie.
Don't watch it.
I saw people saying about Halloween Kills, it's the worst slasher movie they've ever seen. I'm like, you haven't seen
I thought the kills were good.
I didn't think it was that bad. Jeez, like people need to calm down. I think it also just gave the fans what they wanted, right? So my friends knew nothing about the franchise, so I was the one who was the annoying person who was going, "Oh my God!" And I was like, and my friend's like, "Will you shut up? Will you just shut up?" I'm like, "I'm sorry." I'm like,
I don't even think it's the worst slasher movie in the Halloween franchise, let alone the worst slasher movie ever. I think people definitely overreacted to that.
There's always going to be a problem with Halloween Kills anyway, because it's part of a trilogy and it's the middle film of a trilogy. So,
well, the continuity is coming kind of late in the game, I guess. But you've had different directors doing it, and dissecting it, and making it their way. So
I just think I say it's almost like a multiverse, right? So that it's not the same universe. So people need to get their head that it's like, oh my God, they're not following. And it's like, it's not meant to. They've never meant to. This franchise is the most disjointed franchise, aside from Friday the 13th, that ever existed, right? It's like, come on.
Was it the last one will probably be called Shalloween.
Yeah, Shalloween.
More sort of shrunken down.
Yeah.
Even the Friday the 13th movies have more continuity than this.
Halloween kind of matches the whole Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. It's very interesting, and they keep all the reboots and let's go back to real origin stories and let's go forward and let's forget this happened. Let's start this happen. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis has come back 3 times and stories in different incantations. So.
I think everybody's getting confused. That's what.
Well, the Texas Chainsaw series is worse than this one because every single movie in that series is a direct sequel to the original and ignoring everything else. So
that's true. Yeah,
it's like Renee Zellweger and Matthew Connelly never happened.
Just erased from the universe.
And what about yourself, Vix? What have you been up to?
Not a lot. Just hanging out with the kids. They're going to have a long break here again. We've been getting a lot of breaks. They get like all these vacations that we never had when we were kids. But other than that, we're just getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I've been watching. I don't know. I've been trying to watch all the stuff in the Matthews group. I've been trying to follow. You and Jeff always have some good ones, and I still have to watch the one you suggested. I ended up watching Jugface though last night. Anybody watch Jugface?
No.
You got to watch it. It's just very uncomfortable movie. Very uncomfortable. You have to watch
my
it.
alley.
I think Chad Kinkle directed it. I don't recognize it, but it is a good movie. And I got to finish The Autopsy of Jane Doe when I get out of here.
Classic.
And then I watched Jungle Cruise with Asher because he's been waiting for it. So I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was kind of fun. You know, it didn't have any good kills in it, but I tolerated it well.
Like, who's going to die? No one, damn it.
It's just like, well, there was some death, but not enough death and destruction. And, no
the only
cannons.
people that Disney kill off are the parents. So.
There's no blood cannons. But no, it was good. And just getting ready for the holidays. I'm trying to selectively shop for everybody because everybody that I shop from has to have their own cargo ship or I'm not ordering. So that's the way that's going down right now. But other than that, things are good.
And myself, basically, I'm just booking my trip to Russia because we're going to have Little Big and the Hatters, two Russian groups coming onto our podcast today.
I saw that real nice song of morality you put on my Facebook. It was really the mood I was in at the time, so it came in a well placed moment.
I know. I forwarded it to my friends. They're like, "Oh my god, yeah." Mm-hmm. So
everybody that song is.
I'm quite looking forward to it because I'm going to be on tour with them for 4 days.
4 days.
That's cool.
Well, make sure you send me video.
I'm interviewing them while I go on tour with them. So it'll be all over Russia. So I think we're hitting 4 cities in the 4 days of that. So.
Watch, Keith is going to come back. You want vodka? You come here. Let's talk to you.
Looking forward to that. That's quite cool. So besides that, work 9 to 5. Turn into a Dolly Parton song. What more can you want?
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
I was watching what was it the other day? I was watching Hostel. The original Hostel.
Oh my God. They're heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's more intense if you're high. And it registers, all the kills register more. So it was more intense and I was biting pillows. But that's just such a gruesome film. I love it. But it's really gruesome, and it was more intensified in my altered state. But
Vicky had me watch a movie; it literally made me throw up.
Well, you guys try to gross me out too. You must be talking about Atros. Is that the one where you went and smoked a couple of cigarettes?
Yes, that was something there.
That's a tough movie to watch, but it's good.
I'll take you up to Newcastle, Vicky. That's a bit like Hostel 2.
Hostel 2. I mean, I like the first one really well, but the second one is okay, but the first one really was disturbing because my daughter, she's always staying in hostels and stuff. And that's the first thing when I hear the word hostel, I immediately go to that film. It's you're staying in hostels in Europe. You don't want to do that, honey. But I won't stay in the hostel. That's for the young.
Yeah. Like that movie, Vacancy. That's quite spooky.
Vacancy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I should call that. Yeah,
that's really disturbing.
I still think that most guys got most of their sex education from Basket Case, though.
This brings us to The Changeling. The Changeling is a 1980 Canadian supernatural psychological horror film directed by Peter Dick and starring George C. Scott, his wife, Trish Van Devere, and Melyvn Douglas. Its plot follows an esteemed New York City composer who relocates to Seattle, where he moves into a mansion he comes to believe is haunted. The screenplay is based upon the events that writer Russell Hunter claimed he experienced while he was living in the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in the Cheesman Park neighborhood of Denver, Colorado in the late 1960s. Hunter served as co-writer of the film. The film premiered in the U.S. Film Festival in Dallas, Texas on March 26, 1980, and was released simultaneously in Canada and the United States 2 days later. It received positive critical reviews and an early Canadian-produced film to have major success internationally. The film won 8 inaugural Genie Awards, including Best Motion Picture. It was nominated for 2 Saturn Awards. It is considered a cult film, arguably one of the best horror films of all times, and one of the most influential Canadian films of all times. So what we're going to do is cut to the trailer of The Changeling, and we'll be right back.
That house is not fit to live in. No one's been able to live in it. It doesn't want people. She said she'd seen a boy. He was trying to come up through the floor, and he kept staring at her.
What is it in that house, Claire? What is it doing? Why is it trying to reach me?
Will you communicate with us? Will you speak to us?
What is it you want? What do you want from me?
How did you die?
How did you die?
I keep cutting to these high shots because I wanted to establish the presence of the ghost, you know.
He goes through the house with the architect, and they discover hidden behind a second-story closet a secret door.
We had to really create a facade with depth so we could have kind of little subtle things that you see through the skin of a house.
George C. Scott can really take you to a place of agony. And as a director, Peter Medak really was able to bring something out in him that I'd never seen before.
And welcome to the Locations featurette for Peter Medak's The Changeling. Almost all of The Changeling was shot on location in Canada.
Working on scary movies, it's marvelous. I love it. I love it to pieces.
Hello, welcome back to Listener License Podcast. We're discussing The Changeling from 1980. And starting with you, Matthew, what are your thoughts of The Changeling from 1980?
Well, when I was a little kid, that movie scared the shit out of me. I mean, I was terrified of that. I mean, I was pretty young. I don't know if it holds up that incredibly well, but it made a lot of the tropes that we see today, you know, like the classic ball scene. We see that, like, in The Shining, which was released at the same time.
Right.
Lots of other films as well. I was really interested in the True Case.
Yeah, I was reading about that.
From what I can discern, it's all a bunch of hokey made up. There's like no photographs or proof, or he supposedly found this journal. Where's the journal? It seems like I have my doubts about it.
Yeah, I was reading about it before we got on because I saw that it might have been taken or based somewhat loosely on a true story, and I was reading about it, but they don't have any evidence or anything, so you don't know. But I mean, it was interesting that they got their idea from it.
Well, apparently there's also
because there is a documentary that goes a little bit more into
really because it's in Denver. Denver, is that where it is? I believe. Yeah.
Well, apparently there's also there was some claim that in 1969, when all these haunted events supposedly took place, the writer said something about it being the 100th anniversary of someone dying, but there wasn't a house there in 1869. So that I'm trying to remember because I remember reading about it years ago, but I there was some concern over that because he was claiming something about like some centennial, but there was no property on that land. It was just like farmland with nothing on it 100 years prior. So yeah, like Matt said,
maybe.
What's that?
An Indian burial ground?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, was it this story?
It was less a house and more a teepee.
Well, I do believe that they did. Was it this story or was it the fog? I can't remember which one I wrote it down about. Yeah, I think that there was a house. There was a cemetery there. I'll have to find the story.
I think
and they moved it because people couldn't afford to move it. Yeah, or something.
Yeah,
like
they're
that.
still digging up bodies there.
Oh, they
From
are?
that cemetery, yeah. Every time
That's
they go there.
awful. I mean, I wonder how much Poltergeist took away from that.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, I mean, nobody wants to live where a bunch of dead people. Well, then again, people have been dying for like how long?
Well, I was going to say in New York, there's the biggest potter's field in the entire country in Washington Square, where there was hundreds of thousands of bodies dumped there. And it was, I think in the 80s when they kept popping up, bones kept popping up, that they were like, oh my God, we have to literally dig down far enough to get rid of debris in order so that way some kid doesn't just come by and pick up a collarbone. You know, it's like we gotta like wash
there
that
was
out.
a great line in Last Night in Soho. I went to see that last week.
I watched that.
And it's very good. And there's a line in that where the young girl asks Diana Rigg, who's her landlord, if anybody died in the room that she's renting. And she's like, "This is London. Everybody has died in every room in. Somebody has died in every room in this city at some point in time.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. Somebody's died everywhere, no matter where you go.
Well, we live on property, you know, where the Indians used to come and slaughter the settlers all the time, you know. It's just like they come in here and just beat the shit out of everybody and go right back up to Oklahoma.
But why is there never any ghosts for people who were murdered like in 1990?
Some schmuck in a Nirvana shirt.
I know, that'd be amazing.
Some ghost walking around in a Britney Spears on the drift.
I think we're reborn now. Oh, that's terrible.
They're always like people from the 17 and 1800s.
Nothing before that. Nothing before that either. You don't get any caveman ghosts anywhere.
Yeah, you don't get any well, I'll let you know, because again, these entities could be anything, right?
Well, it's kind of like
I always find it
everyone's
interesting.
reincarnated from someone who's famous, aren't they? It's like,
I know.
Yeah,
Elvis.
I always found it interesting wherever I've gone. I mean, I haven't gone I never really did EVPs or something, but I've been ghost hunting for a long time, but I haven't done it in a while. But I always crack up when you go to a different country and people get EVPs and the ghosts speak English. Just like, you know,
it was that
like,
tourist
are they
that died looking
bilingual
for
when they
ghosts.
die, or what's the deal?
It was a tourist that died looking for the ghost. That's the beginning, pretty much.
And why can they never tell us what they want? They always have to speak in riddles.
Because there's rules on the other side that they have to follow.
All right,
they don't have
I have
Verizon.
been told.
And here's the other one. If they can walk through the walls, they can walk through the walls.
Yeah, you pass
Why
over
don't they
with a
fall
Scrabble
through the
box with all the letters missing. I think it's something like that one.
But my whole thing is, if they can walk through the wall, why don't they fall through the floor?
Because they're made of energy and they're ethereal. And you're not supposed to be thinking about this shit. It's a ghost story.
It's a ghost thing.
And Vicky, these rules that they have to follow, what happens if they break these rules?
I don't know. But I mean, I've been around, I'm serious. I'm not even lying. I have been around so many different ghost hunting teams, and they're saying that people on the other side, they have rules because people have ghost box. And a lot of these some of them are literally scared the shit out of me. I've turned mine off on occasion. But they say that there's certain rules. I don't know. I don't make this shit up. People just tell me. I usually hear "fuck you" and "get out," and then that's the end of it.
That might just be the Alexa.
Oh my god!
Alexa being naughty.
Hey, Vicky.
Paul went on a ride, see if we can get a hold of that handbook from Beetlejuice.
I know, right? Seriously.
Oh boy,
Vicky, you're gonna have to get my next book.
Which book is that? I think I might have already got it.
Unexhumed.
I did. I just bought it. I'm going to start reading it this weekend.
Yeah, that's a ghost story for you.
There, good deal.
Now, the interesting thing about The Changeling, I guess we can say that maybe the reason why the writer said it was a true story, because at this point, ghost stories that were being produced by Hollywood and other published film companies at the time were, because of the Amityville Horror and the success of that, it seemed like everything had to be based on a true story after this, because The Entity certainly comes after this film.
Yeah. The Entity really was disturbing.
I love The Entity. That movie.
I love it, but it's really disturbing.
Oh, it's so jacked up. Oh my God.
You know, Barbara Hershey, I don't know how she did that, but she was exemplary in that film. Really
I think one of my favorite scenes in that one is when she when they just don't believe her and she gets her ass dragged into the bedroom.
Yeah.
Like that scene. Oh my God.
No, when the boyfriend walks in and he sees finally what's going on, you know, it's just like in all of its splendor.
Yeah.
But that's a disturbing movie.
That's one thing that I feel was missing from The Changeling, though, is that there was never anybody really giving George C. Scott any pushback on it.
I mean,
he was like a detective, though. He was a detective. He was trying to figure out what had happened.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a big in the review. And I don't remember if it was Roger Ebert who had mentioned there was no, like, he always had his faculties. It was like for a man who literally watched his wife and child get mowed down.
Yeah.
He just kind of ups and moves. And then he gets put in this mansion, which my biggest problem with that was like, he's one dude. He doesn't even have a family.
Oh, what God. That place got like 80 rooms.
I know. I was like, why does he need a house like this? Who in their right mind would give him a house that has 80 rooms?
Isn't he kind of watching it for the historical society? It's an historical home.
Put him in an apartment. What do you mean a home? Like, that was ridiculous. Yeah. It was like, that was, and then the fact that he just kind of was, I'm going to explore and open up a room that's up in, like, it, and he had no, like,
hadn't he heard stuff though? Didn't he hear the banging and he was trying to figure out where the banging is?
Yeah, but he just wasn't scared. There was no like, I'm just going to go. I don't care. I'm just going to go. He never had no
he wasn't intimidated. Yeah, I would have been scared shitless about that point.
That's the issue my roommate had.
Well, he wanted the large mansion because he's a music teacher and he needed to have the students there. And he also would have big parties with all the people there and stuff like that.
That's true, too.
Oh, he has a widower, too. So he could be like, hey, I need a little game.
Yeah.
Right in the beginning, though, and I guess this is a generational thing with the World War II generation, maybe. Right in the beginning of the movie where he's meeting up with his friends when he first moves out to Seattle, he says, well, my wife and daughter were killed 3 or 4 months ago. Time to move on. Like,
I know. And there's a one scene that's like, 50 minutes into the movie where he's like crying on the bed. I'm like, should have put that in the beginning of the movie. Like it seemed like he didn't give a shit about any of them.
It seemed like it was kind of misplaced at that point.
It's just so odd to hear him say, well, they died 4 months ago. It's time for me to get up and move on with my life. Like, whoa, your wife and daughter died in front of you 4 months ago. And you're like, time to move on.
And you would also think that not the realtor, but the woman that worked, Claire, who worked at the Historical Society, you think she would have had a little bit more tact because she knew who he was. And instead she was like, oh, so you're newly single, huh? And she was like, hey, hi, how are you?
Yeah. Like, she was such a tramp.
This family, you crazy woman. What is your problem?
I know he's a widower who saw his daughter and wife die, that slut.
I know.
Like, back off, woman.
Yeah, but here's my phone number.
I mean, I think the one thing we need to look at the Changeling is not about a ghost story, about the ghost haunting to scare. It's basically a ghost who's looking for someone to solve the crime that's takes place.
Right.
And like the fog, this is like, we have to pay for the sins of our fathers. That's pretty much what the Changeling story is here.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the reason why you don't have you get the eeriness and the scariness, but the scariness is that George C. Scott is never really in any peril or any danger whatsoever, because at the moment, the ghost needs him to solve the mystery that's going on. So this is more of a mystery.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It actually takes me back to...
And also, the house is the star of the show. Not even so much George C. Scott.
It also just takes me back to our early days when we were talking more Shirley Jackson and talking about her stories, and that the haunting isn't necessarily that pivotal thing. It's the actions of the person responding to the haunting, and like, why are they getting pulled into that? Why is it them? Right. Because specifically, I'm sure there's been multiple people in that house, but it pulled off of him for some reason as a father, maybe, to be able to say, hey, I think I can get this guy to help me figure this out.
Do you remember the old movie, The Haunting?
Well, it's actually kind of strange. You mentioned The Haunting because Peter Medak, the director, apparently applied for a job on the 1963 version of The Haunting, didn't get the job, and then Robert Wise, the director of the Haunting, let him hang out on set. So a lot of what he did here was actually an homage to that movie.
Makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
That's interesting. Yeah. Such a good, again, like Vicky said, the house was like the star in The Haunting,
Definitely.
The original Haunting, which is a lot more just beautiful, it's just amazing, it's just the sounds in it, whereas like the remake was more like shock horror type stuff, but the original Haunting was just beautiful, poetic.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love both of them.
I mean, if you think about it, with the father being, his daughter just died, this ghost was playing off of the reason why I think he wasn't really scared is because he noticed that the ghost was using toys, the ball. The wheelchair was small in size.
Yeah.
I noticed that. So I kind of had a feeling he knew it was a young child and not an adult.
Right.
Trying to kill him.
But he's able to kill because he kills that police officer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you also have to suspend a lot of disbelief when it comes to, I mean, he literally outside, like the police officer in the car, and then the coin in the well, and like that ghost had reach. Let's just put it that way. It literally was going across counties, and it was like, hey. And I'm thinking, well, if you could literally go that far, why couldn't you not solve this yourself? Like, so I was. Just put a memo on the table like, this is not his son. Like, literally, just slip it out there. Like, so that you had to kind of suspend your disbelief on a lot of.
Yeah, those cops dug out the well and took the boy's remains out in the bag. They did a bad job because you think they could clean out that whole entire well and would have found out the bag.
That's the thing. Do you think there's anything else down there? Nah. Oh, okay. We'll take your word for it. Then we're good.
I like the way they carried the body out in a clear plastic bag too, so you can see it perfectly.
And then the lady's like, I've just had the sort of bedroom remodernized. Now you're taking up the floor.
I know. Well, I mean, notice the moment when she saw that, her kid reacting, she's like, go ahead, destroy it. She was fine. Once she saw it, she's like, oh yeah, you need to get whatever the hell that is out of here. Cause I don't have time for this. Get it out.
Did you think that the house was so big that it kind of like tried to go after your comfort zone? Because there weren't really any over the top scares, but they were subliminal kind of scares, I mean, not really subliminal, that they weren't, it wasn't bloody and like horrifying horror. It was kind of all mental.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe pushing a comfort zone a little bit. Because the house was so big, I mean, and there was just so much to explore, and you knew there was going to be a bad room in that place. You just knew it.
I mean,
there's always a bad room.
It was more less about of a haunting and more of about a mystery, right? Like, because I spent less time going, oh, what is the ghost going to do next versus, oh, how is he going to piece or what is going on, right? Because at first he thought it was a girl, and then it wasn't a girl, and then it was Joseph, and Joseph definitely needed a timeout, but I don't blame him because, daddy did what he did.
Well, right there, that seance, that was really a cool seance.
Yeah, that was great.
That was really
it's hard to get those right, and they got this one right.
Yeah, it's so spooky the way she was just like taking over. And just
are you the child that got killed by the coal cart? I mean, that was just fun. That's what I like about this movie.
When you hear the kid's voice, it's on the tape. It's less spooky, more sad. Like I just sat there going, "Oh, this poor kid," because you just hear him kind of cry, "My father, how did you die? My father." And it's, man, it actually like hits you in the heart.
Yeah.
Well, it's sad.
Well, and I love that he actually was able to I guess, almost give him a premonition of what had happened, and then it was transmittable, meaning then Claire comes and it does it to her as well. And so it's almost like I need more people on my side, but like imagine something forcing that on you. Like, I don't want you to show you my last moments of my life, but I have to, just so you know what's going on, right? And what happened to me. And it's a mechanic that other movies have used since. So like, you know, there's movies that have used premonitions, like The Haunting of Hill House. Like they did that in the newer remake with Nell, where she was where she would touch something and it would give her the memories of what happened. You know,
I have to see this new version. I've heard it's fantastic. I have to see it. It's
great. Like I love the series. The series is fantastic, and Blythe was actually beautiful as well.
I liked it. I love Blythe.
Correct.
You know,
you have to remove yourself because it changes the continuity to all of the characters because the dynamic is very different. It's a family dynamic, but Blythe was another one.
Cheaper looking.
Yeah.
I actually feel like the Changeling, because there's a lot that like John said earlier, like and actually my roommate noticed the same thing because he had never seen the Changeling before. So when I threw it on the other night, he was like, it just kind of feels like there's no mourning period for George C. Scott.
That's not normal.
I kind of feel like this would benefit from being a miniseries because I feel like there was so much crunched into a 2-hour movie. There's so much information in there. It was very densely packed.
Yeah, I agree.
And like maybe this would benefit from like a mini series treatment where you slowly kind of get all the information out.
I mean, I was gonna say I also just one of the things that it bothered me because the fact that the Carmichaels, you know, the Joseph Carmichael that wasn't Joseph Carmichael, that he kind of I felt like he knew, but then he didn't know. And then I thought like the woman, what was her name? Minnie or Miss Norma. Yeah. So she was alerting him, but then I thought, well, if you know something about this house or you know what's going on in that house, wouldn't you just say your family owns that house? You make the choice of never letting anyone in. So that was like a weird thing. Like,
well, I think
she tried that.
Is that I know in England that basically if you have a house that has historical provenance, that basically you as the homeowner has no rights to the actual. You have the rights to live in it, but you don't have the rights to do anything with it. You know what I mean?
Interesting. So you can't tear it down or lock it up, or because I was wondering that, like, why wouldn't he just, if I wanted to make sure no one ever was there, I would just lock it up so no one could ever use it.
It's like Sackett's Harbor. Sackett's Harbor is a 1812 war took place there, and most of the houses were built at that time, and you can't do anything about the exterior. And the thing is that when you sell the house, you can only sell the house, but the people inside the house can't do anything. They can update the inside of it, but they can't tear any walls down or anything else. Everything has to stay the same because it has historical relevance.
Well, they could have filled up the well and made a water feature.
Which is quite interesting is that all the interior shots are all done on a set. They built that whole set.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's quite amazing when you think about it.
And also the locations. There were so many locations that they filmed in, and I was impressed by that. I'm like, oh, now we're in Seattle, now we're in Vancouver, now we're in New York, and I was like, wow, you know.
To speak on John's point about the about keeping people out of there, right at the beginning, the other woman at the Historical Society, when they're on the rooftop, tells George C. Scott, "You shouldn't be there. That you're not supposed to be in that house. Nobody's supposed to be in that house." So I think they were trying to keep people out of that house intentionally because Norma says,
"This is not a house for kids."
Nobody's been in there since I've been with the Historical Society. So it does seem like they're going out of their way to keep people out of that house.
But you would think you would also. Like to me, I think it was meant to create mystery, meaning it was a great device to be like, ooh, what does she mean? Definitely. Right. But for me, I was like, so why wouldn't you just say, there's some creepy things that happen. You know, there's been things, deaths, whatever, be honest.
I don't think it's because of creepy things happening in the house that they're keeping people away. I think they're keeping people away because I believe the Changeling or Melyvn Douglas's character knew what was going on and didn't know exactly that if someone was in there, not that a ghost would be unable to do the mystery, but there might be information inside the house that could basically give up who he is and his position. Yeah, it seemed more of a thing about, because the old woman is basically the same age as Melyvn Douglas, so obviously she probably has more of a connection.
But the thing is so he seemed surprised at the end, because even he took his amulet out or whatever, and he looked at it and he was like confused, like, wait, how can this be, right? So it's weird that he
remember being
to be honest,
switched
I think
out
for me, I thought he knew.
Yeah.
See, I thought he knew, because the thing is, let's face it, he comes in, he gets adopted from the age of 7-8 years old. So he knows he's going into this family sort of thing. And I think he's more shocked by how it all came out, that he found out.
I don't think he knew it was a murder. I think maybe he thought the original little boy died of natural causes, and so he doesn't lose the inheritance. They brought me in. I don't think he knew it was a murder.
But don't you find?
Yeah, but like, wouldn't you find that weird? Like
somebody whose son dies, and you need to take your son's whole name and use his birth certificate.
That's what I'm saying. Like he had to know, because at one point he'd be like, "My name was whatever," and he'd be like, "No, your name is now Joseph." Like what? Like why?
I think he knew that there was a death, and he was replacing somebody because. It's make it clear to him. You're going to, when I die, even now, you're in charge of this huge fortune. When I die, everything goes to you. All we got to do is pretend you're my son who died.
The whole question is that basic, but it wasn't an adoption that took place. Basically, the kid came into the family. It's like, you're going to be my son. You need to pose as my son.
Yeah,
you need to act as my son.
Correct.
And you basically will be my son, even though, because there was an adoption there.
Yeah.
If there wasn't, this whole facade wouldn't have to happen.
Yeah.
So obviously they brought the kid in from God knows where. He probably picked him up from Dickens.
Sacred Heart was the orphanage nearby. That's what they were. That's what they were talking about. And then they sent him overseas,
delivered by Amazon, I think.
With a drone, it just dropped the kid in.
But I don't know how
they basically had some pull with this adoption agency or with this orphanage. They pull an illegal adoption. They send the kid overseas. No,
they didn't use an adoption because there's no adoption papers.
Well, they did not adopt him.
They did not adopt him.
Yeah, it was a scam for the father to keep all of the money.
It was I mean, obviously between all of us talking, it is confusing because there was even a mention of a girl in the beginning who got hit by a car, and then that went away, and then it became a boy, and it was like, that was like, what, I'm confused by what's happening.
I think that's Melyvn Douglas and the woman at the Historical Society trying to throw them off track.
Oh, got it.
That's what I think that was.
Got it.
I think Melyvn Douglas character knew what was going on, because there's no way you would know. And to be honest, why didn't you, if the son died and everyone knows the son died, why don't you, you just adopted someone?
Yeah.
How much do you remember from when you're 5 or 6 years old, though? So he probably.
I think you would remember that you basically were brought in to take the place of someone else, and you need to be this other person.
Yeah.
You're not being adopted to become a new son into a family. You're brought in.
Correct.
Not an adoption to basically be this other person who's dead.
He had to be let in because also the father wanted to make sure this kid didn't misstep, because if he did anything wrong and didn't fit the part, then the father knew what was at stake. So he had to let him in on that, to be like, you have a big weight on your shoulders. I'm sorry. And he could have lied to him. He could have said, you had a brother, he died, and I was adopting you, but you now need to take his place because you're not blood, right? So if you're not blood, you're gonna.
But if you were adopted, the child could have had the fortune.
Yeah,
he did. Not the children get the fortunes of their parents when they die. I mean, it was all legal. The problem is the father killed somebody. Now the thing is, the kid can go in and be stupid and do undeniability. But the thing is, I mean, when you get a bit older, when you get to about teenagers to 20, you're thinking, why am I being this other person? And what happened to this other person? I have to pretend that I'm this other person. This person died, so if he died of disease, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Why am I covering up this person's crime who basically brought me into the family? That's what you do.
Well, the problem is that the father was skipped over in the will. So everything was the entire fortune was going to his son regardless. So that's why the whole charade had to happen at all. Because basically, if the son died before, I think they said if the son dies before he turns 21, then the entire fortune would go to charity, and the father would lose everything. So I guess, oh shit, sorry, I got a massive leg cramp. It's right in the middle of that. Maybe Joseph Carmichael's like giving away too much.
Joseph's like, shut him up now.
Yeah, the ghosts are coming to shut me up. So that's how I had read it. Is that that's basically what's going on? Is the father gets nothing. The fortune's going to his son. His son is sickly. So if he kills the son and replaces him, gets this new kid, sends him off to Europe, and World War I is taking place during that time. So that kind of stretches the time that he's out there. He comes back as an adult. Nobody knows the difference. Nobody knows the original Joseph Carmichael died, except maybe a couple people at the orphanage, maybe.
Right.
Whoever set up this illegal.
If you got money, you can buy a kid very
right.
easily.
Yeah.
Look at Angelina Jolie and Madonna. They do it all the time.
Oh, you look like you need a home. Here's $10.
But yeah, I don't think that Senator Carmichael knows necessarily that the murder takes place, because he was even arguing at the end, my father's not a murderer. My father's not a murderer.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know. Whatever happens when he puts that amulet down gives him a heart attack. And he dies.
Well, I think he sees what happens to him. Yeah. I think he gets a premonition as well, and that's what kills him.
But George C. Scott sees him at the house when the house is engulfed in flames. So is he having astral projection while he's having a heart attack?
Again, this is where I was having
the murder, and it gives him a heart attack.
Is that he did everything he possibly could do to help Joseph. Like, he did literally everything he possibly could. And what does he do to repay him? I'm going to throw your ass off of the, and mow down, Claire with a wheelchair and throw you off of a banister and try to burn the whole house down. It's like, dude.
And try to drop a chandelier on you.
I know. And try to drop a chandelier. So it was kind of like, that moment was weird to me. I would say it'd be one thing and then how the hell did, how the hell did the senator get there? Was it like he actually came into the home, or like it was that?
Well, he was dying somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's his spirit, his ghost. Basically, it's poetic justice, isn't it? So basically, he's returned back to the scene of the crime, and therefore his soul will perish within the house, within the mystery of the house.
It's also a crime he didn't commit.
I know.
He was 6 years old when the murder happened.
Yeah, but at the same time, the thing is like you may keep telling yourself that this doesn't happen, but there's got to be a part of you that knows what the hell happened.
Well,
you might choose to ignore it and tell yourself that no, it can't be. But even when you tell yourself something like that, deep down inside, you have a little bit of an idea.
Well, and it's
whether you want to acknowledge it or not is another story.
It's also how he responded to it, right? Had he said when he confronted him, because basically John said, do with it what you will, right? Like, here's the proof that I have. And his response immediately was, if you tell anyone, I'll ruin you. Like, I'll kill you, I'll ruin you. So it's how he responded. Had he said, oh my God, I didn't know, what can I do? Like, maybe something would have changed, right? But how he responded was like, I'm going to keep covering this up.
And which is also, you have to also think is why is it such a big deal that anyone stays in that house?
Yeah.
And because it's on his orders. So obviously he knows something. If you don't know anything, you'd be like, yeah, you can rent my house. I don't give a shit.
That's what I mean. It's like he had to have known. Or you wouldn't have this woman who is like, call me if anyone's in that house. Like, what?
Speaking of the house, that was the most ornate setup, because that wasn't a house. That was a set.
Yeah, that was a set. That was entirely built on a set.
Yeah.
And that's probably that was pretty intricate, just right down to the wood carving on the staircases and stuff.
I would love to walk around that set, because to be honest, they did it in a great big circle. So basically that way they can do panoramic shots, and they can do camera shots all the way around the first floor.
Oh, that's cool.
Must have been an amazing looking set, to be honest, if you think about it. They won't do that anymore. But so
no.
It was interesting when the music box, was actually the tune that he was composing. That was quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I did like elements like that. I liked the music box. I love that the pounding actually ended up being the time that Joseph died, and it was him hitting it. That was like really cool. I love
yeah.
I think it could have been like it probably could have got away with being like an English film, because there's a program on ITV and it's called The Foundlings, and it's basically kids from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s who were given away out of wedlock or different things like that. Like they were like ditched, and like strangers would take them in, or and then you've got like these horror stories of like Catholic Church linked orphanages where they found like bones of kids and stuff. So
that was up in Canada, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that story recently. I still have not heard anything on that story. And I'm really curious.
Find a lot of that in the United States too.
Yeah, when I first started working with psychiatric patients here in the UK, they used to send me to Shenley Hospital, which is an old Victorian mental institution, which is now a bunch of flats now. But at the time, basically, that most of the patients that were there were born there because unwed mothers would have their children there, and they would stay there and stay in the mental institution. They were part of the mental institution. Patients until the day they died. I mean, the sad thing about Shenley is that they would tend to get out in the middle of the night and walk down because it's on the top of the hill and it's a great big winding road. They would tend to get run over by cars who were going up the hill. But
mental maternity, similar.
But it's almost like weird when you think about that. Basically, it's like because your mom was an unwed mother and she gave birth to you there, that you were institutionalized for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a weird thing back in the day.
Something you literally had nothing to do with.
Like 11 from Stranger Things.
Yeah. The scene with the ball. I remember a couple years ago, I posted something on Facebook that I was watching it again because it had come on Shudder. And I remember my cousin who had watched it with me maybe 30 years ago just responded, "Is that the one with the ball? That scene still freaks me out."
Yeah.
So this movie has that ability. It has that ability to kind of stay with you, and years later, you still remember certain moments. So it's very well
about that wheelchair when I was a little kid.
The wheelchair too. The wheelchair.
That's creepy. That little wheelchair, because
that was like very Rosebud, like that.
Very
scene.
Rosebud.
Yeah.
There's some scenes that are memorable in that film, but there were some that was like, really? A phone booth out in the middle of the Rocky Mountains all by itself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
With no snow on it.
Yeah, with no snow on it.
Why couldn't he open the door to it? He was stuck inside there for a second.
We broke down in the Rocky Mountains, and this is like in the early 90s, and I guarantee you there was no phone booth up in Estes Park, sitting on the side of the road. So, yeah. That was convenient.
Certain scenes could have been shot better, unless it was the ghost's influence on the house burning down. I've been a volunteer fireman, and I never seen a house that large light up so fast.
Yeah.
It's all wood and wicker,
pine,
and paper.
Yeah.
So let's do our final thoughts about The Changeling. And starting with you, Craig, what's your final thoughts of The Changeling from 1980?
It was a chilling little story, and quite a sad, the premise of the story. The premise of the story was quite sad, to what happened to the kid, and because of his disabilities and stuff, and it's but my favorite scenes probably the piano scenes. I think they were quite chilling.
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
I like that.
And how many Joseph ghosts would you give this out of 5?
I'll give it a 3.
Ooh, you're cheap over there.
What are your final thoughts of the Changeling?
It's only chilling because it's bloody freezing outside. I'll give it 4 Patrick Swayze's out of a Ghost.
Molly, you're in danger, girl.
I am. No, I thought it was really. It made you think. Actually, these guys just talking about it now, and like we were recapping things. Like it was like, yeah, it was a bit kind of bit and piecey. I was kind of trying to figure out what was going on. But maybe that's the way it draws you in. Because you don't really want to.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit like the Mousetrap, actually, which I've been meaning to go to. Like it's still on in London, So. But but I thought George C. Scott was great. He's such a great actor anyway. Like he's got a great expressive face, Yeah, but I thought it's very interesting. Interesting movie.
And how many Joseph Ghosts would you give it out of 5?
4 Patrick Swayze's out of a Ghost. I think Patrick Swayze. 4, I think Keith. Yeah. And
what about yourself, Jim? What are your final thoughts of the Changeling, and how many Joseph Ghosts do you give it?
I would give it a 4 Joseph Ghost because I like. Again, we pointed out some scenes that could have been shot better, or some of the criteria with him mourning more so earlier than later in the movie. But I liked it with the wheelchair, the ball scene. That has been burned in my head since childhood too, since I had first seen it when I was young. But again, I know I mentioned this in another film prior that we had discussed. But, this would be another perfect candidate for a remake with today's technology and special effects. I think it would make it another good remake on this one.
I think it would be a great miniseries remake, because you could flesh out the story more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What about yourself, T? What are your final thoughts of the Changeling?
I didn't catch who you asked.
I think Matthew's frozen, so we'll go to Vicky.
Oh,
Vicky,
me?
Yeah, yourself, Matthew. What's your final thoughts?
He wasn't frozen. He was just like,
it's a classic. I think it's a classic. It invented a lot of tropes. I think it's been used by a lot of people, influenced a lot of filmmakers, but I don't think it quite holds up to today's standards. So I'd give it.
How many Joseph Ghosts do you give it out of 5?
In 1980, I'd give it 4.5. Today, I'd give it 2.
No, I agree with Matthew on that. It set a precedence for some of the films today. If you noticed the recording, I just wanted to point this out quick. When he was listening to the ghost voice on the recording, that was also kind of reflected me back to Sixth Sense when Bruce Willis was listening to that. So, even though this movie could have been shot better, to what Matthew said, it did set a precedence for some other ghost stories. So,
you're right. What about yourself, Vix?
Are we giving it Patrick Swayze's or Joseph's?
Whatever floats your boat.
No, I would say give it a 4. I have to agree with Matthew and Jim. I guess I don't know. I think it's a good ghost story. I don't think it's horror by our measure of horror, but I think it's a good ghost story. I don't think it sucked completely. I don't know if it translates well into, this decade, but I wouldn't mind seeing a reboot of it if someone, could put it together like that. I think what Joe said, like a miniseries would be really cool to expand on the story. I would like to see that, but I don't know. I liked it. What about y'all?
What's your scoring out of 5?
4.
And what about yourself, Joe? Your final thoughts?
I'm going full 5 because the movie, I think it does stand the test of time because it doesn't try to overdo the effects that would be completely dated. By doing everything the way they did, I think it actually, because they didn't try to overdo the special effects, I think it actually holds up a little better. I love the mystery aspect of it. I love the slow unraveling of everything. It looks like I'm the lone one here. I think it's actually a perfect ghost story. It's kind of the spiritual successor to The Haunting in a way. It did a lot of the stuff that The Haunting did, you know, with the banging sounds and people trying to figure out what they're coming from. And like everyone else said, it did inspire a lot of ghost stories after that. I know that even in watching it the other night and having seen it before, there's still a sense of dread in the movie that is kind of palpable. Like, you know what's coming. You know that wheelchair is going to turn. You know the ball's going to drop. And when you hear the ball start to drop, it still kind of got me. Even all these years later, even knowing it was coming. So I think that, to me, and the fact I don't believe in ghosts, but this movie had me like sincerely creeped out.
Did you think the first ball dropping was the scariest, or after he went and threw it in the water and it came back and it came back wet when it was bouncing down the stairs?
I think the first one was actually creepier. It made no sense to me if he's holding on to the ball because it was Kathy's that he would throw it in the river at all. Like, that does, because it'd be like, no, this is my daughter. This is something I'm holding on to for my daughter who passed away. So yeah, it is. So that part didn't make any. The fact that he threw it in the water didn't make any sense to me at all. But overall, though, yeah, like it still creeped me out at points. I still found things in it that I guess I didn't realize before. Because in rewatching it, I guess I saw the conspiracy between Melyvn Douglas and the woman at the Historical Society. Kind of saw that a little more. So yeah, I give it 5 because I think it's about as close to
a good ghost story.
I think it's close to perfect as you're going to get with a ghost story.
What about yourself, John?
I'm going to go back to something you originally said, Keith, which is it is a story about a mystery. And then even playing off of that, is it a story about a mystery that needs to be solved? And I felt like that's where, I'm going to give it 2 Josephs because of that reason, because at times I didn't care if it was solved. And why I say that is because there are moments where it was the lack of sort of the motivation from John, where he's just kind of there, right? Like, if he was not in that house, he wouldn't care. But he's in the house, but he's in that house for a different motivation, right? And so this just kind of gets put in front of him, and then it's like, while I'm here, I'm going to solve a mystery. And then that's where I was just like, and so it was for me, because I go back to also Shirley Jackson, the feelings of that were very different from the feelings from this movie, which was, it was a mystery that needed to be solved, but I just didn't care. And at times, I was literally pausing the movie because I was like, oh, where are we at now? And I would come back and and I had to rewatch the whole movie again just to be like, okay, I played it through, but if I'm stopping, it's because I'm not interested in the mystery that's being presented to me. So unfortunately, I give it 2 Josephs.
Myself, I'm going to give it 5. I'm going to match Joe on that. And the reason being is because this is one of those films for me is kind of the perfect film. I always like a slow burn more than in your face kind of horror film anyway. And I love the way that it kind of just lulls you into the story. The way that I love the way that the filming technique is done, the way that, the panoramic views and everything like that. And basically it just builds and builds and builds, but it's very, very slow, and you take your time with it. And I love that basically after all these years, and I have seen the film quite a few times, it still haunts me. It still stays in my subconscious.
It has a way of sticking with you.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's the perfect ghost story. Something, like The Haunting. I look at the Conjuring films, which I think are all crap. I don't, that's my personal opinion, because basically these are ghost stories that are basically boom, 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 bam, 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 and but they don't stay with you whatsoever. The Changeling, I like the slow burn and just stay with me. And so for me, this is a 5-star for me myself. So. And this brings us to The Fog, which is a 1980 American supernatural horror film directed by John Carpenter, who also co-wrote the screenplay and created the music for the film. It stars Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Atkins, Janet Leigh, and Hal Holbrook, It tells the story of a strange, glowing fog that swoops over a small coastal town in California, bringing with it a vengeful ghost of mariners who were killed in a shipwreck there 100 years before. The Fog was not well received by critics upon release, but was a hit at the box office, making over $21 million domestically on a $1.1 million budget. Since release, has received more positive retrospective reviews and has become a cult classic. A remake of the film was released in 2005, which was universally panned by critics, as it should have been. This would be the film that would end the relationship between John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, because he would fall in love with Adrienne Barbeau, and the rest is history. So what we're going to do is cut to The Fog, the trailer, and be right back.
John Carpenter's The Fog.
This is KB Antonio Bay. Stevie Wayne here, and let me be the first to wish Antonio Bay a happy birthday. We're 100 years old today, and keep a watch out for that fog bank heading in from the east.
100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unknown came out of the fog. Now it has returned.
Oh, Jesus.
100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something unnatural came out of the fog. Now it has returned. 100 years ago, between midnight and 1, something evil came out of the fog. Now it has returned.
Who's there?
The Fog.
Antonio Bay has a curse on it. We're all cursed.
There's no water getting here, but something awful cold, Pete.
I think I'll go to Vancouver now.
Where's the fog now?
Well, it should be right outside my door now.
Oh, there's something different about this fog. Dan, stay away from the door! Someone listen to me!
Get inside and lock your doors. Close your windows. There's something in the fog. Stay away from the fog. From the creator of Halloween, the ultimate experience in terror and suspense. John Carpenter's The Fog, starring Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, John Houseman, Janet Leigh as Kathy Williams, and Hal Holbrook as Father Malone. The Fog. What you can't see won't hurt you. It will kill you. Between midnight and 1, it will find you.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast. We're discussing The Fog from 1980, and starting with you, Jim. What are your thoughts of The Fog?
I like The Fog a lot. I like the way it was constantly. There was always something constantly going on with the fog. It kind of reminded me with the movie Blob, instead of with the fog. And when you saw it coming, and there was nowhere you could really get away from it, and it kind of encircled you like that. So it kind of was reminding me of like a ghost story, monster movie, all wrapped up into one. And I liked it a lot. I did not like the remake of The Fog.
Nope.
That one I did not like as much as the original Fog. So
I didn't hate it, but I mean, it wasn't nearly as, I don't know. I just didn't like it. I couldn't get into the characters like I did the other one.
I went to see that in the movie theater, and I fell asleep during the remake. It was
wow, you loved it then.
It's on a giant screen with all these sounds booming, and I passed out.
They should have called it the nap.
Yeah, but my girlfriend at the time was a big fan of Tom Welling. She had such a crush on Tom Welling, and she hated the movie. And I'm like, well, if you don't, you have a crush on the lead, and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible. Then the remake is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Matthew? What's your thoughts about The Fog?
Well, as someone who lives in coastal Northern California, we really love it because it's just it's so much fun. Every time we're driving and the fog comes on, we're all like, don't go in the fog, Andy. Like turn on the radio and just
and it's
imagine
always
some
foggy
crazy
in the morning
woman
in California too.
Oh yeah.
Always foggy in the morning.
Oh yeah. And I love the idea of turning on the radio and having the DJ just completely losing their mind and sing. I was thinking maybe there's an alternative version of this. Do you remember when the weatherman says to her, "Oh, you taking stuff to stay up at night? To stay up? Oh, it makes you feel funny."
Yeah.
Now, what if she was in full-blown methamphetamine psychosis and just up there,
just imagining all that,
screaming into the microphone? You know what I mean? And the whole film is through her point of view, imagining it all happening.
That would be cool, actually.
I still would have watched it. That would have been a cool twist, actually.
I mean, it would be amazing because she would wake up and be like, "Oh my god, was that me or did that happen?" That would be actually really cool.
Gonna get some weird looks in the town the next day. I'll tell you what.
I quite like the film a lot, but there are a couple problems I do have with the film. And to be honest, I love the slow burn and stuff like that. And that is, as far as the way it's filmed and stuff like this, and it is one of John Carpenter's bloodless films again,
right?
Like it's Halloween. But my problem basically is that the Mariners are coming back to get revenge on the descendants.
The six.
Of what happened 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So why would Adrienne Barbeau or Jamie Lee Curtis be in any kind of threat whatsoever? Because they had nothing to do with this town. Adrienne Barbeau moved to this town from somewhere else, and she's not a descendant from there.
Well, Adrienne Barbeau, she's telling everybody what's going on, and they kind of shoehorn.
No, by the end of the film, they're coming after her.
Well, yeah, they're trying to kill her, but I mean, basically, they pushed in another Scream Queen. Actually, there's kind of three. You got her mother, and you got what's the girl who else played in the Halloween.
He brought
Sandy.
Yeah, but so
Sandy.
you got but the thing is they really face it, Jamie Lee Curtis really doesn't have anything major. They kind of shoehorned and squeezed her into this movie because
I think
she really doesn't do anything.
I think all her role is the outsider, right? So
right.
I personally love the film just because it's simple. The mechanics are simple. It's not overly complex like The Changeling, where the ghost has all these crazy fucking abilities that can do anything, right? Whereas the fog is just this ominous thing that comes in and rolls in and does damage, right? And the other thing is I love that it doesn't take them long to figure it out. Because the problem with a lot of other movies like this is I don't know, I think it's fine, guy, and then they're murdered. This was it was plausible and believable, right? And
no,
you say it's not believable, Matthew?
Yeah, I say it's not believable. It's so problematic and silly. You ever see the South Park version?
No.
A Halloween special.
There's something I need to
leper
watch.
Pirates. I don't know. Leper
No,
pirates.
I just thought it wasn't overly complicated. I just felt like it wasn't something that it was 100-year-old curse that came back. Fine, great, believable. A little boy that can pick a ball out of water out of nowhere, what? And those types of things. To me, I had fun. I felt like I was on a ride, and I was like, "What's going to happen now?"
Right.
And, Jamie Lee was meant to be the drifter. Wasn't supposed to be there. She's caught
a
up
drifter,
in it.
all right. Doesn't take her and was it Atkins much too long? Hello, want to go to bed? Sure,
why not? Hey,
are you a weirdo?
And then you have the
weirdo? Yeah,
pretty cool.
The drunkard father Malone.
I like that this breaks that rule because based on the law of the horror movies, Jamie Lee Curtis should have been dead because of that.
Oh, 100%.
Depend on Tom Atkins.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a Tom Atkins trope too. Because Tom Atkins, apparently, he can get any woman in bed right away because he does it with Ellie in Halloween 3 too.
Yeah, that's true.
There's something about that Tom Atkins.
He doesn't have a mustache in this film, does he?
No, in this one he does not. Yeah.
That's
one of the rare. It's not the mustache.
So basically, more than a mustache going on to get the women in bed.
Yeah.
I also laughed at Father Malone. Father Malone's I'm gonna drink some wine. He was just.
I know. Hal Holbrook was a saucepan in this, wasn't he?
So good.
Oh yeah, this is one issue that I had with it. Father Malone has a grandfather who was also a priest.
Yeah, and
ministers
have
they were ministers.
kids. I was going to say ministers have children. Yeah.
Was he a minister?
They call him the priest. The thing is that his title of the film is
pre-COVID.
What's that, Keith?
The title of his film, he's priest. He's a priest. I keep saying the priest or father such and such. The priest, father such and such. So he's supposed to be a priest. So obviously he must be Catholic. The only Catholics have priests.
Okay, then how did he? Somebody,
or wait a minute, or this guy, or his father could have, like, after this been like, I'm not a priest because of what he did, because he literally sentenced people to death, right? So you're gonna like uphold to be a priest after that, like, good luck. So he probably was like, I'm not doing that, and I'm gonna live my life now, and had children, right? So.
He could have been a priest / pirate. In his spare time.
Exactly.
Or he could have been a Judas priest. You know,
breaking the law.
I love how nasty freaking Kathy was to Sandy, her assistant. She was there was a line, like, I wanted to write it down, I forgot, but like she says something to her,
annoying but true.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that line was so good. You're annoying, but yeah, you're true. And I was like, jeez. Like,
Nancy Loomis is like the female David Spade. She's just making snarky comments, no matter what movie it is, whether it's Halloween or this movie. She's just like, oh, okay, I can't be bothered with your ass. Like, that's her entire attitude in every movie I've ever seen her in.
Cool.
I did learn something from The Fog as well, that John Carpenter's not very good with character names. He used the same character names, because I mean, Tommy Wallace. Well, wasn't Tommy Wallace in Halloween? And then
Sandy too.
Nick Castle, who was the original Michael Myers. He played the original Michael Myers. And
he names the characters after his friends, because Tommy Wallace is Tommy Lee Wallace, who worked on Halloween, and so I think he just names everyone after his friends.
Dr. Fives, I guess he was watching Vincent Price the weekend he was writing this, maybe. After like, God, I'm like, it's like using all these names. But another thing is, like, he really wanted Janet Leigh to be in this film, but does Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh ever share a scene in this film? They don't, do they?
No. I mean, no.
What's the end, don't they?
Wait, weren't they in the church at the end?
They're in the church at the end together.
Yeah.
But I don't even think they even say anything to each other. It's almost like they're in the same room together, but don't.
Almost like mother and daughter.
I think the only time that they ever had a scene together was in Halloween H2O, where they actually did have a conversation.
Yeah.
And she gets in her cycle car and drives off.
Yeah, well, there's a couple nods to, and even in this, there's a nod to Psycho. I feel like there was something that was said that I was like, that was very much a
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, remember? It was like she said something, and I was like, oh, that's good. They kind of bring that in.
I have to sit there and say, though, the celebration, the 100-year celebration, I mean, what a sucky party that was. Let's go look at the statue. And you look at the statue, it's like this little statue on top of this pedestal. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Everyone has to look at it. Okay, it takes you a minute. It's not going to take you that long.
Can we get the whole town? Can we get the whole town of 50 people through this? Oh, I don't know. We need to hurry up. Okay.
With the whole celebration, that brings something that I wanted to bring up. It's very reminiscent of the Return of the Evil Dead, a 1970s movie. And I when I was watching this the other day, and I haven't seen this movie in a long time, when I was seeing it, I couldn't help but be struck by how much of the imagery reminded me of Armando de Osorio's Blind Dead movies. And I don't know if it was intentional. And when I Googled it, I found that there was a tweet that somebody had sent out, and they had put all these scenes side by side, where it does look like this may have been inspired by those Blind Dead movies. Because in the second Blind Dead movie, after the Templar Knights are killed, there's the 100-year anniversary of the death of the Templars in this little town being freed, and they rise from the dead and come back and attack the town. So there's a lot of imagery. The third one was the Blind Dead on a ghost ship. So that's one thing. If I ever get a chance to ever speak to John Carpenter, that's probably more than anything. The question I want to know is, did the Blind Dead movies inspire this?
Good.
I'll send you guys the picture so you guys can post it. That way, if the listeners want to look, there, it'll be right there on the page. But yeah, it's really interesting how many of the shots were set up to look like it, and how much of the imagery does seem to match up a little bit.
One of my favorite shots is the when Stevie is going to the radio, going down, and it's such a remoteness. Like, I love that whole, like, imagining being there, and that in a way she's a little bit of the narrator at times, because she has to be the one to convey the information across, to everyone. And yeah.
And these just aren't regular ghosts, pirate ghosts. These are lepers. And they're pirate
they're
ghosts,
leper pirates.
Yeah. So they're even more gnarly than a regular ghost. They've got things crawling in and out of their eyes,
They were lepers first. Does that make them leper pirates or pirate lepers?
They're pirate lepers, pirate ghost lepers.
They're lepers before they became pirates, right?
So they're leper pirate ghosts.
I don't think
they're leper ghost pirates because they didn't become pirates.
I don't think they're pirates.
I've only seen seaweed zombies in Creepshow.
They weren't pirates. They were just people who were going to looking for a place.
Yeah, but now they're pirates. They're coming and stealing gold and killing people.
Well,
they're getting back ghost pirates.
Friends of the leprechaun.
Well, and I think that this was also based on a story that of a ship that wrecked. I can't remember where it is now, but a ship had wrecked in California, I think.
Well, he does use the Jaws story again, doesn't he? The Mary Claire story, doesn't the guy that gets used in here? The same story that Robert Shaw uses in Jaws gets reused in this one. This time with
totally,
I love the music.
I love the music too.
It reminded me of It reminded me of the music from Dunkirk, where it's like this foreboding sound that's coming, and it just gets.
It's like an ascending. Yeah. Like something about it's like not an arpeggio. It's like an ascending chord that slides up. It's like go say from G to A. It's just like, and it's got that menacing feel to it, like strings on the bottom end. Yeah. I was thinking, why does it take these pirates 100 years to come back? Or they're like super stupid ghost pirates or something. Maybe they didn't have a sat nav or something.
They were waiting for the statue. No, just kidding.
Now, when Carpenter released it, first edited it, he said that he knew in his heart it was an absolutely awful, terrible movie. Yeah. And he didn't know what to do. And that's when he got John Houseman and added that opening scene to give it that
was the best scene in the whole movie.
It really
John
is.
Houseman
That was like, if he hadn't put that scene in there, I don't think it wouldn't have stood the test.
It would. I mean, it would have just felt really, really campy.
And then he does that in Ghost Story. John Houseman just can tell a good story. I would just pay for it.
Right.
Actually, both of the movies today had cast members from Ghost Story in it, because Melyvn Douglas.
Melyvn Douglas and John Houseman, and he was telling ghost stories in Ghost Story. So
the one that was weird too in the beginning is how they show up the first night, and then once it was like midnight or 1, they disappear, and then they come back again. I'm thinking, like that's what it was a little weird for me. Like, why did you show up before? It was because of the book.
It's all within the same 24-hour period, though, because they show up after midnight, and they disappear at midnight. So
no, but didn't they show up at midnight and disappear at 1 or something like that, and then again the next day?
It's all within the same. It's all done in the same 24 period when they show up after midnight, and then they don't show up, and then they show up that evening. After the day happens, and then they disappear at midnight because they get their 6. I think they kill Father Murphy before the stroke of midnight.
Yeah.
And then there's
because they only kill 5 people. I mean, 6.
And one of them comes back from the dead briefly.
Oh, that guy! But Jamie Lee Curtis is like looking away.
Dick Baxter. He came back.
Classic jump scare.
Classic Dick. Always coming back.
I don't know. That didn't jump scare me. Did it jump scare y'all?
No, I knew that was coming. It was like literally.
Kind of remind me of Salem's Lot. You know, when the mom comes up, it's kind of around. It's like, okay, well, let's kind of seen this before.
That movie scares me more, especially with Danny floating outside the window, trying to get his friend to open the window up. It's like, fuck you, man.
My favorite part of the
film on the rocking chair with the yellow eyes.
Oh gosh!
Oh yeah, that's a great scene.
Oh, that freaks me out.
That's a bit spooky. Yeah, but there's something really spooky about fogs anyway. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I'm talking from like back in the day, you know, when I was a young lad. You know, no, you're pushing the bike up the cobbled streets, like, you know. We used to have stuff called smog, you know, which is like a combination of
California has that now.
I thought they were cleaning up their act.
Yeah.
Long before the days when we all used to smoke, you know, rollies without any filters. No, but I just love fog. It's just beautiful, you know. Like Vicky was talking about, like, it is something beautiful. When we were in Denmark, I remember we were driving back from the gig, and it was like all this like white mist hanging around in the vales, you know. And it was just like sitting there, you know. It's so great, you know. You just want to run down into it, like, you know. And
you get a lot of it in Cornwall and Devon, down on the south coast down here.
You do and you don't, because I've been caught in fog before, and it's scary as hell because you can't literally see in front of you. Like, you cannot see in front of you when it rolls in. You're literally bumping into things.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how crazy it is.
It's like when you go in an airplane, when you're going through the clouds, you know. It's kind of same feeling, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there was one thing that kind of entered my mind when Adrienne Barbeau's going to work, and basically she's like walking down that long pathway to work. I thought to myself, like, what the hell do you do on a really stormy wind? It's a really stormy rainstorm. I know.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It's like, God. And then she played. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people like jazz, but God, man, I would not listen to her station.
That's the film company too cheap to buy it.
Exactly.
I love jazz, but that was
they're like, here, let's put this on.
Elevator.
And also,
I like jazz, but I don't think she was picking out the best.
No.
Let's put it that way.
Awful. Well, they also played a song by a band called the Coupe de Villes. It was John Carpenter and Nick Castle and Tommy Lee Wallace, I think.
Right? Yes.
So I think that's who the Coupe de Villes were. So it was John Carpenter's own music. That's entirely just for budgetary reasons.
But the music works, though. I really like the music for most part to this. I like the soundtrack to this.
But I meant this song she plays on the radio station was by a band called Coupe de Villes, so it was a Carpenter original. But Carpenter's score, man, his scores are always amazing. And I actually saw him perform this score in Chicago because he toured a couple of years ago. After he had that successful album release, and he did a show at the I forgot where it was, but it was here in Chicago, and he played the Halloween theme, he played the theme from The Fog, he played the theme from In the Mouth of Madness. It was just really, really cool. I love his music.
Me too.
Yeah, he does do great. He does compose his film work very
well. I think
not so much on the jazz side of it, but on his film scores, he's fantastic.
I think his music elevates his films, because I think if you were to have, you know, like the normal like John Williams score under these movies, I don't think they'd be anywhere near as good.
No, it's kind of sort of like lo-fi. You know, it's almost like it could be like working with like Gary Newman or something, or John Fox. You know, it's got a great. I think he was a great.
Really
had
good
a great feel on,
atmospheric.
Great feel for the synthesizer, you know.
Right.
It also made me. I also think that there are other people that copied him afterwards, like whoever did the score from Phantasm, kind of has that kind of John Carpenter feel.
Same feel, yeah. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think
interesting guy, you know. I mean,
did he do Thriller?
Oh God!
No, that's John Landis.
Sorry. John Landis. Yeah, that was cool.
But I mean, I think The Fog. I have to say it's really good in atmosphere. It does carry a very good atmosphere, and it does have a way of, like, you know, just basically it's just another slow burn film, like The Changeling is basically, you know, paying for the sins of our father. We kind of got that thing going on again.
Right.
So, but I think that, and I have to say I think the pacing is very well done for a slow burn for a movie of this ilk, for John Carpenter as well. So, you know, I think it probably would have been easier for him to do another Halloween film, but it's quite. Because I think that's what they offered him first, was a sequel to Halloween. But he said, "Oh, you want to do this first?" And then, of course, he writes Halloween too. After
right. Mm-hmm.
come out of the book. Let's do our final thoughts of The Fog then, starting with you, Craig. What's your final thoughts of The Fog?
I love the movie. It's one of my favorite movies that I watch every Halloween.
Yeah.
My favorite scene is probably the ultimate favorite scene is probably the end bit where they have the red eyes and they cut the priest's head off with a sword and that. And but I would say I like the internal scenes in the radio station when there's the curse part and the wood has the names on it, and then it comes through the radio station to do with the curse. That was quite scary. And but I would probably, if I'm going to rate it, I'd probably give it a 5 because I watch it at least once a year. So I can't give it lower.
Yeah.
You give it 5 lepers.
5 lepers.
5 lepers. Yeah, there you go.
5 leper ghosts.
5 lepers.
And what about yourself, David? What are your final thoughts of The Fog?
It's just funny, like starting to sort of really get into John Carpenter, and seeing how much he's done, and the Halloween stuff and all that, and Escape from New York, of course. And he also did. He's working with that guy Dan O'Bannon. Is it Dan O'Bannon? Yeah, because that Dark Star, that was another classic, back in the day. But the Fog's just, you're right. Like he says, it's a slow burner, and just like real atmosphere, classic, creepy hammer horror,
really
sort of
good quality films.
Like
the film quality was superb. I mean, that was really good.
And
I thought the film quality was
the 4K
good
version's
too.
out soon as well, or it's out already.
But I think it's somebody I think I would like to sort of get into a bit more. It's like you normally hang around like the Hitchcocks and people like this, and and by the way, Craigslist done this great site for me, Acid Monk, and I've got a song called Alice, which anybody would like to check out. It's great,
And
Craig's done a great job. He's trying to drag me out of the 18th century and get into the 21st century, so that's great, And of course, we're helped with Tom Keefe and everyone, and it's great, It's like funny. I seem to be regressing more into the past. I am going into my own fog, so I'm going to get out of it. Maybe I shouldn't be watching or listening to too much Bob Marley because he was definitely in a fog.
Bob Marley's good.
He's beautiful. He's a beautiful dude. But
how many lepers do you give the film, David?
Okay. Out of what, sorry, Keith? How many? Out of
5.
5. Okay. 5.
Okay, brilliant. And what about yourself, Vix? What are your final thoughts of The Fog?
Yeah, I'll probably say 5 lepers as well. I think it was pretty good because it's a good ghost story. It's got everything in it. It's got the eerie. It's got, the unknown. It's got the ship. But I mean, what's more scary than a ghost ship, Especially for those guys that got killed first. It's just like something comes up and says, Elizabeth Dane. That just scares me. That's just even a scary name because that, it's just has got something about it. But I thought don't watch the new one first. If you want to watch both of them, do it, but watch the old one first.
Yes,
because the 2005 version sucks balls.
It's a slog to get through that 2005 one.
And what about yourself, Matthew? What are your final thoughts of The Fog, and how many lepers do you give it?
Well, it's a good, campy, silly fun, and one of the great things about it is you can watch it with like an 8-year-old. That I think.
You could. Yeah, you could.
Yeah. So I would say I would give it 4 or 5 if you're with a child, but compared to like John Carpenter's The Thing, which I consider one of the greatest films ever made.
Me too.
I give it 1.
Yeah.
The Thing is just so good, and The Fog.
Are you talking really the old Thing, or are you talking the newer one?
Not Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks. The
Carpenters. Yeah. Okay.
Do you remember that one? That something the swamp.
Swamp Thing.
Yes, that was brilliant, you know. So sorry.
Yeah, that's John Carpenter's thing.
Yeah, but it's a pretty silly stuff there.
What about yourself, Jim? What are your final thoughts?
Well, I think it's Matthew, you're never babysitting my kids. I mean, put on Frozen, put on any other Disney film, but if you're 8-year-old with
I don't know. Asher grew up with The Walking Dead.
My little brother wanted to watch.
Or they're just never going to go into any fog ever again.
You showing your kids The Fog is the least you got to worry about from me, man. Like,
yeah, same here.
I'm going to be firing up joints, putting on fucking Serbian films. Drunk as hell.
Dressed as Pennywise.
Yeah, dressed as Pennywise.
Well, the kids will sleep good. So, with The Fog, I like the influences it set. I watched it when I was young. It came out in 79. Halloween came out in 78.
Yep.
And he banged out a lot of films right. Corman Payne put out a lot of films right away. It was Halloween, The Fog, and then Halloween 2 came out the year after.
Okay.
So he was pressed.
Yeah.
He was on a roll, you know.
I did like it because, it influenced us growing up in our years. And you all can say this because when The Fog rolls in, what do you think first?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
The movie Fog.
The Fog, Andy.
Yeah. And
they're here.
It was it's a good Halloween movie.
It is.
You got to love the unknown in the movie of The Fog. You're standing in thick fog and you think about it. You cannot see, and you possibly have a leper serial killer right out in 3 feet in front of you.
Who's also dead.
Yeah. So even if you survive, you got to worry about catching leprosy with all the gunk on him and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
But Andy was not as scared of anything. That kid was like, "I'll go out in the dark, in the fog, whatever." That kid. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Always
what
a
did the
children.
leper pirate say to the hooker? Keep the tip.
Yeah. So I'll give The Fog. I'll give it 5 lepers, 5 Joes, and 4 roadhouses. How's that?
There, that'll work.
What about yourself, Joe? What are your final thoughts of The Fog?
I think it makes a great double bill with The Changeling because it's 2 great ghost stories, but they're 2 very different types of ghost stories. This one was a lot more on the like Matthew said, the more fun and campy side of it, whereas The Changeling was a lot more serious. Also, like Craig said, this wouldn't seem out of place, like in a marathon of like Hammer films. That's actually a good way to put it too. I grew up with this movie too. I love the movie. I think it's actually creepy. The imagery in it is fantastic. I love
the end where they got the eyes and everything in the church.
I think it's a nice, spooky little ghost story. Maybe it is saved by John Houseman at the very beginning. I don't know. I know a lot of people complain about it being kind of slow for a Carpenter movie. I have no issue with that. I'm fine with it being kind of a slow burn. And it's only like 92 minutes or something like that.
Not that long.
It's not like it's really long either. So, personally, yeah, I love it. As for John Carpenter, like I think out of all the American horror directors of the time, like him and Tobe Hooper and Don Coscarelli, Wes Craven, all those guys, George Romero, I've always said that they're great horror filmmakers. I think John Carpenter is a great filmmaker that made horror movies because I think he would have done well no matter what type of movie he was making, and we saw that later on with like Big Trouble in Little China and all those other movies.
I think it's just 13 as well. So.
Yeah, Assault on Precinct 13 before this. Yeah, I think he's just a great filmmaker that just happened to work predominantly in horror, whereas George Romero was a great horror filmmaker. I've seen it. What was it? There's Always Vanilla is not that good, so I wasn't too much of a fan of any of the other guys outside of like the horror sci-fi genre. Mm-hmm. Whereas John Carpenter, no matter what he did, I like it. Well, up until Ghosts of Mars. So personally, I love the movie. I think it fits in great with The Changeling. A nice little ghost story double bill. just chill out, have fun, watch two great little spooky movies.
Bring your kids, smoke some weed.
What's the other thing? Neither one of these two movies tonight had anything that like would be like completely objectionable if you did have kids around.
It might scare a little kid a little bit.
I showed my 8-year-old the fog. She didn't blink. She was like, whatever.
It is scary. Asher's so used to all the cool CGI and stuff now. He's going, this is not scary, Grandma. And I go, well, I thought it was when I was 8.
My son committed the mortal sin and said Jaws was boring. I'm like, I'm still not.
Oh, no. Asher loves Jaws. His mother yells at me all the time for letting him watch that. But that's why he comes over to my house on the weekends.
With these two movies, there's no over the top gore. There's no sex and any of that stuff. So yeah, I suppose if you want to show your kids.
Yeah. He's like, that's why I gave it a 2.
There was, why'd you give it a 2? There's no tits and ass.
I was like, no.
Or blood, or guts, or brains flying into the wall. Transgressive
blood cannons.
Isn't that one of Joe Bob Briggs's rules that there's no naked breasts, you automatically deduct 1 star?
Yeah. Usually it has to have more than 3 or 4 breasts in it. So,
anything you like?
I actually, again, I'm going to give it 5 just because I like that it isn't. It's meant to be a little bit campy and not serious, and like it's meant to be a fun little adventure. I also love just the way it was shot. That coastal town. I'm from California, so seeing the coast and seeing that was like, oh, I miss that. Fog is creepy to me. I think just the unknown, that element of it, balances the campiness of it, right? Because anytime you have a priest carrying around a 50-pound golden cross just to get it away from everyone, you just have to kind of laugh in this moment because the fog is like creepy as hell. But like that's the kind of fun with that. Like I just that's what I love about that film, and good for him to take a chance because he could have been bartered by the studio to go and do another Halloween right away, and he. If I remember correctly, hearing the story, he saw the fog rolling in San Francisco, and he just had this sort of vision in his mind of what he wanted to do for film, coupled with, as Vicky said, that story. So I think it's and also good for him to have the vision that once he did it or once he filmed it, he went back because he almost felt like it was too campy. So he had to reshoot.
He wasn't happy.
He was like not happy with, and it to me. It could have been really bad. Like imagine like the CGI effects of having that fog roll in. It could have been like, this is to me, it was actually pretty well done for the time, and like in the 80s, seeing that I was like worried going, oh God, is this going to look really bad and cheesy? No, it actually looks ominous, and
I like it still.
Yeah. So I loved it. I'll give it 5 lepros. What about you?
Without breasts?
Myself, I'm going to give it 3.5. And the reason being is because I think the use of miniatures and stuff like this, he's grown as a filmmaker, and I like that. Yeah. My problem basically is that they set off at the very beginning that the ghosts are going to come back and kill the descendants. So for me, he kind of does a Sherry Moon zombie sort of thing, where basically we need to make sure Adrienne Barbeau has a big, huge climactic scene at the end. It doesn't make sense. She's not a descendant sort of thing. And I kind of think that, when they do find the bodies and stuff like this, and there's no cutting, there's a little bit of things that kind of bother me, like, when the sailors do get killed by the ghost, and basically, we basically get, swords and axes shoved through them, and basically the bodies are like, oh no, they just drowned. They drowned on the ship, and you're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, sort of thing. And if Andy got killed, I probably would have raised it to about a 4 because I hated that. That kid was god awful.
Because we know how Keith loves all children.
That's true. The Hollywood bowl cut. I don't know what Hollywood has with their children and with their bowl cuts, but it's a god worst awful thing. And he's just like, and if I was that old woman, I would have threw Andy out there here. And then if you're so worried about the door, you go out there. And I would have shoved him out, shut the door, and saved myself. But that's
Instead, she gets pulled outside.
Yeah, but I do love the atmosphere, and I do love this. I love the atmosphere in the story, and I love the origin story as well. And I quite like that. It's just that it doesn't seem like there was a huge threat to anyone who wasn't a descendant. That's the only problem. And then when you find out they only needed 6 bodies, it kind of like so everyone in that town basically didn't really have to run away in the fog, did they? And that's more of an afterthought, but I did enjoy the film while watching it at that time period. So.
There are truly so many
License podcast, and we will be covering next week The Dark Shadows. And of course, we are going into our Christmas month, which we'll be doing Little Shop of Horrors, starting with the book to stream, which is Green Thoughts, written by John Carpenter from 1939. And we'll be also covering the Roger Corman 1960 film and the musical films from the 80s, starring Richard Dreyfuss and directed by Frank Oz. Of course, we'll be continuing our Bewitched session, and our 80s, Welcome to the 80s, we'll be dealing with two films that were ahead of their time and are considered cult classics today, which will be Shock Treatment by Richard O'Brien, which is the sequel remake equal to Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Streets of Fire, which was directed by, I forgot. I'll tell you. I'll put that in our But of course, we did interview E.G. Daily, and we'll have our interview that will be up in December as well, along with our interview with Jim Beaver, star of Supernatural and Boardwalk Empire, and his interview will be up on Christmas Day. So it's good night for myself, and good night, Craig.
Good night, everybody.
Craig, are you there still? Did Joseph get you?
Good night, David.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Keith, and Pirates of the Halloween.
Good night, Matthew. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Good night, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, Keith, and good night, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Good night,
John.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, Joe.
Good night, John Boy.
Yeah, good night, John.
Good night, everyone. And it's Walter Hill that
Good
directed
night.
Streets of Fire.
Walter Hill. Thank you.
Hey, I don't think that was Richard Dreyfuss. You're thinking of Rick Moranis there, buddy.
If it's fine, Rick Moranis is.
And good night, John.
Good night, folks, and happy Thanksgiving, folks. We're
That
not
too.
going to be
Thank
seeing
you.
each other, so happy Thanksgiving. Happy Tofurkey Day for all the vegans.
And it's good night for myself, and we'll see you next week with Dark Shadows.
I keep going to the river to pray, 'cause I need something that can wash out the pain. And I'm sleeping all these demons away, but your ghost, the ghost of you, it keeps me awake. My friends had you figured out, yeah, there's so much inside of you. You tried hiding another you, but your evil was coming through. And these guys sitting on the wall, they watch every move I make. Bright light living in the shade. Your cold heart makes the spirit shake. I had to go through hell to prove I'm not insane. Had to meet the devil just to know his name. And that's when my love was burning. Yeah, it's still burning. I keep going to the river to pray, 'cause I need something that can wash out the pain. And I know I'm sleeping all these demons away, but your ghost, the ghost of you, it keeps me away. I keep going to the river to pray, 'cause I need something that can wash out the pain. And I know I'm sleeping all these demons away, but your ghost, the ghost of you, it keeps me away. Each time that I think you go, I turn around and you're creeping in, and I let you under my skin, 'cause I love living in the sin. Oh, you give up the ghost, stop the haunting, baby.